Hey everyone, and welcome into my 1cc of Battle Garegga, which I just got a couple weeks ago. This is maybe one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing, I've done in a video game up until now. And I realize that there are harder challenges out there than this, but for me at my skill level, this was quite difficult. I wasn't actually sure if I was even going to upload this, not because I'm not proud of the run. For my skill anyway, it's like the run went pretty well. It's relatively cleanly executed. But this is such an iconic game, and I felt like I had to think of something sort of unique. Maybe not unique, but at least interesting to say about it, because I think the game sort of deserves that. One of the things that I ended up thinking of was, it has to do with how people talk about this game, and particularly a kind of back and forth between newer players who are maybe too intimidated to try this game, and well-meaning experienced players who are trying to assuage those concerns. I ended up coming to feel that there's something sort of missing from both sides of that conversation, and there are things that people said that did align with my experience and some things that did not. So I'd like to, sort of talk about that stuff. Oh, by the way, one of the things, before we get into that, I just love that you can see Black Heart in the shadow here. I didn't actually notice that until I'd already cleared the game and was watching the replay back, but Rising games and this game as well are full of little details like that you just kind of keep noticing the more you play. So this is a game that's on a lot of people's bucket list. It's so iconic. Lots of people want to clear it, but a lot of people have this feeling that they're not good enough yet. Maybe they'll eventually get to it, but they want to wait until they're better at shmups to do so. And I just think that if it's on your list of games that you want to try, you should just do it now. I would not necessarily, within reason, I would not necessarily recommend this as your first shmup, but if you've got a few clears under your belt, I think you should go for it. Because I think there's a risk when we say, I'm not good enough yet, I want to play this game later, it's too hard for me now. I think there's a risk that you just never end up doing it, because I don't think you're ever going to feel like you're totally ready for this game. And one way to get substantially better is to play a game you think is too hard. And I think a lot of people have that feeling about this game. There's a few benefits to kind of pushing yourself, though. There obviously is a point where a game might be so overwhelming to you at your current skill level that you're not going to get much out of it. That can definitely happen. But like I said, if you've got a few clears under your belt, I actually don't think that that's going to be true of this game. Not that it's not hard, but that I think you have it within you to be able to understand this game if you have some basic familiarity with shmups already. And I think there's a few benefits to doing so. One is that if this is a game that you've been kind of looking at longingly from a distance, I think when you play it, you're going to be excited to play it. And that excitement can really push you through any sort of challenge that the game is going to throw at you. I think some people get into this mentality of they got to go through this steady progression of increasing difficulty when they play these games. And that's certainly one approach that you can take. But if you're not excited about the game you're playing, I think that's going to kind of hold you back. Whereas, if you are kind of enthused about the game that you're playing and you think it's really cool, it's really awesome, you're going to find a way to clear that game, and it's going to push you through the challenges that it's going to offer. So if you're looking at this game and think this looks freaking awesome, just play it. You'll find a way. It can also lead to, playing a game you think is too hard can lead to pretty rapid growth as a player. I feel even looking back on this now, I feel I'm a much better player, like, coming out of this than I was at the start. And, like, I found that to be true also just kind of in life, where doing things that you feel you're not 100% qualified for can be like an opportunity for massive growth in a way that I think is really beneficial. And the last thing I'll say about this specific thing is that expecting a game to be hard is sort of like an option select you can do, where if you clear the game, it's like, oh, I'm a badass, I fucking cleared this hard ass game. But then if you don't succeed, it's like, well, this game is hard, so I'm not supposed to succeed right away. And honestly, like, that can be a way to help manage failure. Really, this should be the approach we take with all the games we play, but one of the things that can happen when we're playing a quote-unquote easy game is like if we fail at the easy game, it can feel like, oh, I'm just such a terrible, terrible player. Everybody says this game is easy and I can't do it. Like, I'm just a failure. Whereas if you're expecting a game to be hard, like, you know, there's an easy excuse that you can make to yourself for failure. And as long as you keep coming back to it afterward, I think that's totally fine. But we do have to kind of talk about the elephant in the room here, because the thing that people are intimidated by primarily is the dynamic difficulty in this game, the rank system. And I think this is kind of frustrating for people who love this game, and I would count myself among those people at this point, because rank and discussion around rank sort of dominates the conversation, and it's kind of like all anyone talks about, and like, there's so many things that are cool about this game. It's not just the rank, right? So that can be kind of frustrating, but there's a reason why it sort of dominates the conversation, because it is like the number one concern that most people have when they go into this. And on the flip side, I think there are, you know, to try to like assuage those fears and to try to turn the conversation to some of the other things about the game, I think there's a well-meaning effort by more experienced players to, I think, kind of downplay like how significant the rank management is in this game by saying things like, oh, well, there's really only like, you know, 5 or 6 principles that you keep in mind, and if you follow those principles, the rank will never get so out of hand that it's just unmanageable. And at that point, you know, you're keeping the rank under control by following these simple principles. You can just not worry about it and play the game. And I will say that this did not match with my experience. It's not that it's wrong. If you pay attention to this run, you know, the tips that are on the Shmups Wiki and like, you know, on the farm thread about Battle Garegga and like just things that people have said. I think, you know, there's some YouTubers who have videos about this kind of thing. The tips are not wrong. You'll see me following them essentially exactly in this run, and it's true that it keeps your rank under control, and then you can focus on dodging and, you know, killing stuff. But it's not the whole story, because although the strategy of rank control in this game is relatively easy to comprehend, at least easier to comprehend than some people make it out, that's true, the tactics and the moment-to-moment decision-making of rank control is what the hard part is. And that is not trivial, particularly for a beginner. What I mean is, like, when exactly do I self-destruct? Like, what's a good time to do that? What's a bad time to do it? How many power-ups do I pick up? When do I pick them up? How many options? When? You know, these are questions that have nuanced and complex answers depending on what's going on in the game. And it's not going to be the same from run to run. That's one of the cool things about this game, but it's also one of the things that makes it hard. There's a fair degree of randomness, and also just due to the variance in how you yourself are playing. There's just, you're not going to do it the same way every time. And so it requires decision making. Watching replays absolutely helps, but you're probably not going to be able to execute it exactly the way that the replay you're watching does, unless you want to reset the game every time something doesn't go how you expect it to. And that's not a good way to play, in my opinion. So you're going to have to learn decision making. You're going to have to build those decision making skills, and that's hard. And there's no way around that. It's going to require a lot of practice and repetition and routing and, you know, trial and error and just like a lot of kind of difficult and sometimes frustrating things. And I don't think downplaying that is really that helpful. But here's the other side of that coin. This game, like, once you start to master the rank system, it empowers you just as much, if not more so, than it punishes. And I think that's the thing that I think should be re-emphasized when we're talking about this game to newer players. This is stuff that has been said before, but I think it needs to be re-emphasized. There's a really interesting series of articles from about 10 years ago called The Genius of Garegga. I think the website is down now, but you can find it on the Wayback Machine. I'll put a link in the description. And a couple of the points that are brought up there really stood out to me. One of the things that the author points out is that, in another game, something like picking up power items. Picking up power-up items would be just like not a meaningful choice in most games, because it's just good. Like, there's no real downside to doing it. It makes your ship stronger, so you just do it every time. The rank system in Garegga turns this into a meaningful decision. You can power up your ship, and it will make you stronger, that's true, and it could make certain sections of the game easier to deal with. But it might make later sections harder, and so you actually have to take a calculated risk there. There's a risk, and there's a reward, and it's like a meaningful choice, and depending on the context, you might make different decisions about that. And different players with different strengths and weaknesses might make different decisions about that. So many games try to give players choice, but often it ends up being just kind of a smorgasbord of options that are all sort of equally valid, and there's no real downside to anything. So, it seems like, oh, you can just do whatever you want, but then none of the decisions feel impactful. I think what makes, in this game, and just in games in general, what makes decisions feel impactful is like having consequences. A decision feels more like a real choice that you are making when you are actively choosing one thing, knowing that you are giving something else up. And that thing that you're giving up is significant. And this game is littered with that everywhere. And I really think that that's one of the greatest strengths of this game. And it makes everything feel like it has gravity to it in a way that is very difficult. But, the optimal decisions are hard to make. But it also gives you a lot of actual control over how the game goes. And that can feel very empowering. And so I think the primary thing that I would stress to someone who's maybe intimidated by this game is, like, go in expecting this game to be hard, but know that the reward is going to be that you're going to be able to forge your own playstyle that in many ways may end up being meaningfully distinct from how other people play the game, and you're going to be able to exert control over what's going on in a way that you just don't get in most other video games. I think this is what sort of Kamui, who's the best player in the world of this game, what she's referring to when she talks about how this game tends to reveal people's personalities. I think that really is true. I'm a relatively new player, so, maybe take what I say with a grain of salt, but just like from my own experience and watching other people's replays, it does really feel like everybody has their own sort of approach, and what risks people are willing to take and what risks people are not willing to take. It comes out, their personality comes out, and it's something that's honestly kind of beautiful about this game. So, to summarize, I guess, I do think new players are too intimidated by the rank. But I think that to some extent the new player feelings of this game being really difficult and the rank management specifically being difficult are valid, and there's some truth to that. Going into this game knowing that it's going to be hard, and that it's not just the bullet patterns and the bosses and the level design that are hard, it's actually the rank that's hard. That's part of why it's hard. Knowing that going in, I think, is critical to like not burning yourself out in this game. Like you got to manage your expectations, but also know that this game is going to give you like a sense of empowerment that is just really rare in a lot of video games. And that's the benefit. On top of that, you're going to grow tremendously as a player playing this game. So I strongly recommend to everybody who's had at least a couple of 1cc's under their belt, give this game a shot and seriously make an effort. Okay, I guess I'll talk about the run now, because that was my soapbox. So we just beat Blackheart 1. Not too bad at this rank. One of the things that is different about this run compared to my previous attempts is that normally I would actually self-destruct one more time, ideally before getting the 3 million point extend. But I decided not to do that on this run because I was choking a lot in the late stages. And, I think I was actually a little bit too scared of the rank in the late stages. And I'd already done quite good rank management up until now, so I figured, let's just see what happens if I don't self-destruct, where I normally do here. And, well, you can see what happened. I ended up clearing the game. So coming into stage 6 with 4 lives total, the 3 planes you see in the top right, that's extra lives, so it's 4 lives total, is really pretty good. And I've got homing now, which I set up on the last stage by dropping 5 bomb fragments, and then when you pick up your next option, as long as you don't drop any more bomb fragments or collect any, the next thing that you pick up has got to be an option, something like that. Anyway, maybe again, I'm still new. Maybe maybe read the strategy thread on the Shmups forum or something like that. But anyway, for this section, I like to use a bomb to kill the 2 turrets at the bottom as quickly as possible. And I find that makes it pretty manageable. It looks scary, but it's not that bad once you get those 2 turrets at the front destroyed. Here's another spot where you can set up homing, actually a couple spots where you can leave 5 bomb fragments. Homing is so essential on this stage. Well, it's not essential, but it's so beneficial. And it's actually one of the ways in which I feel like the game doesn't 100% succeed in its thesis of like player choice. Because like almost everybody uses homing. It's so overpowered that almost everybody uses it. It's cool that there's these like hidden option formations. I actually kind of like the fact that they're not readily communicated to the player. I have views about that. I actually don't think it's necessary for every game to communicate all of their mechanics explicitly to the player. Maybe that's a hot take. Maybe I'll talk about that some other time. But anyway, I like that it's kind of a hidden mechanic. But the homing version is so overpowered in comparison to the rest of them that it's kind of not a meaningful choice. Even Kamui, in some of her runs, uses homing. She uses it less than a survival player does because it's useful to be able to control your options manually for scoring. But even she uses it for some sections. And so it's like, it's just so good that you kind of want to use it. These like tank sections are so scary because they can shoot you like really low on the screen. And I actually have no problem with that. Some people really don't like that. But I actually think it's kind of hilarious, as long as it's not overdone. Like if anything, like any trick, if it's done too many times, can start to feel stale. But I actually don't have a problem with it in this game. I just think it's kind of funny. But you really gotta be very vigilant. On this section, if you stop shooting and then only start shooting again when the second tank appears on the left, you'll actually prevent a third tank from spawning because there's too many sprites on the screen. And I still ended up bombing that section. But I find that if I don't do that sprite sealing trick, even when I do bomb, I often die. So it just makes it a little bit more consistent to do that. But yeah, this whole stage really is just really terrifying because it is very easy to get sniped out of nowhere. They went for kind of a very similar idea in Batrider Stage 6, but I actually think this version is better. I can't really put my finger on exactly why, but the Batrider Stage 6 just feels a lot messier than this stage does. Alright, coming up on the Stage 6 boss, which is quite a fun boss in my opinion, Junkie Monkey. And it's definitely a kind of Yagawa-ism, you'll see that in a minute. For this first section, I just like to dodge it for a little bit and bomb. You know, at this stage in the game, I'm not going to take too many risks. And then for this attack, he ended up not doing it this time, but he can do this like really fast spread that there's actually a safe spot for it, or a safer spot anyway, in the middle. And he does like a sound cue first, so you can sort of anticipate it. But he didn't end up doing it at all on that one, so that works. That's fine with me. So here's kind of like the Yagawa arms, as some people call them. There's like, if you play other Yagawa games, you'll notice that he sort of uses this concept kind of a lot, going all the way back to some of his earliest games, actually. Overall, like, this section actually isn't too hard. It's like fun to dodge, and that's it. Golden Bat really does quick work of a lot of these bosses. So we're on the final stage, and I still have homing. That's pretty important. It's not absolutely required. I have gotten through this section a number of times without homing, but it's just easier with homing because it's just easier when you don't have to be directly under stuff. What I'm doing here is I'm kind of like only shooting when the cannons on the bottom are out, because if you kill the turrets up top, the screen will start scrolling, and if you haven't killed the guns on the bottom, they'll keep shooting at you, and it just makes this next section really annoying. If you stick to one side of the screen here, it's easier. Again, that's only feasible with homing. If you don't have homing coming in here, you can still kind of Ustream from side to side, and it's not that bad. You do have to worry about those enemies coming in ramming you, which if you're not paying attention, or even if you are paying attention, that can happen sometimes in a way that's sort of frustrating. Same idea here. I just kind of like to stick to one side of the screen. I do want to collect some of these bomb fragments because I want to drop 5 of them exactly, because I'm going to set up homing. I have it right now, but I want to set up homing again for my next life, because that's useful on the final boss. So I'm going to leave it at the 5 bomb fragments and then let them scroll off screen. I'm just wiggling back and forth here to kill the planes as they come in and also do damage to the cockpit of this thing at the same time. Alright, gonna bump my auto fire up to maximum. And in a minute here I'm also going to get rid of my homing options, because actually I find that just the standard formation is more useful for Blackheart 2. Now you're gonna see I got extremely lucky with Blackheart 2 in a way that almost I have to admit, it's sort of like there's a part of me in the back of my mind that's like, oh, this run, it's kind of a fluke. That's not really true. But he does this like grenade pattern over and over again, and he doesn't, apart from the winder, he really doesn't do anything more difficult than that. And that almost never happens. So I did get like really lucky. The thing is, I'm coming in with so many lives that I would have been fine even with a really hard Blackheart 2. I've never died more than twice on Blackheart 2. And even if I had died twice, or maybe even 3 times, I would have been in good shape to still clear, just because of how many resources I'm coming in with. So the run really isn't a fluke, but you don't get to see really hard Blackheart 2, unfortunately. Oh well, we take those. So we're coming up on the final boss, Glow Squid. This final boss has some concepts that would kind of get reused in Batrider, but I actually think this boss is more fair than the Batrider final boss. This first phase is, well, I died on it, but that was actually the first the first unintentional death of the entire run. So pretty happy with that. Every other death was on purpose. This first phase here is not as hard as it looks. This stuff is relatively easy dodging, although I say that I'm going to bomb it because I got a little bit out of position there, but it's not too hard to dodge this stuff if you kind of stay towards the middle and don't freak out. This, though, can be a massive pain in the ass. Those cannons in the back, you can roll 5 different options, and it's the same 5 options for the left and the right one, but they roll a random number for those independently. And so there are 15 unique combinations. That's if you consider, like, if you had option A and option B, if A on the left and B on the right is the same thing as B on the left and A on the right, which I kind of consider those to be the same, then there are 15 unique options, I believe. Most of them are actually not that bad, though. There are a handful of them that are nightmarish. But most of the combinations are okay, which is why I don't think that phase is actually as bad as, like, the Batrider final boss. And then this, the sort of chicken with its head cut off thing, very reminiscent of the final boss of Garegga, which was one of Yagawa's early games. I think this is mostly intended to cause psychological damage, because I find that if I just stay in the middle and don't worry about tracking the boss too much, and just kind of bomb when there are those, rockets coming from weird angles, I find this to be not that difficult. Again, I think it's mostly to freak you out right at the end of the run. There we go. That's the clear. Ended with 5 lives in stock, so overall pretty clean run for me anyway. I know I'm only scratching the surface with this game, but for me that was very good. Proud of that. I think this is maybe the only time that I've, like, cried tears of joy when clearing it. I know that's cheesy, but that really did happen. I'm not, like, normally a super emotional person, but, like, that was like, looking back, it's kind of like the curse of knowledge a little bit. Now that I've already cleared the game, looking back, it's like, oh, that wasn't that bad. But, like, this game kicked my ass so hard for a while. So I was really happy to get that. Hope you found the commentary enjoyable. I'm not sure what I'm going to do next. I think I have a recent clear of Batsagun that I think I'm going to upload, because I ended up really enjoying that game as well, and I want to talk about it a little bit, so I suppose you have that to look forward to if you want to stay tuned. But otherwise, hope y'all have a good day.